Hi, and welcome to our webinar on finding accommodation in Bristol. This is specifically advice for new international students. So this video is for you if you're an international student, if you will be starting your studies at either the University of the West of England or the University of Bristol starting in September 2023, and if you haven't yet secured accommodation in Bristol. We'll cover a range of things, including when to start looking, costs in Bristol, a rental contract or tenancy agreement, paying your deposit or your rent in advance, where to look, and potential risks. There are a few of us on the panel. I'm Izzy Russell. I'm the Student Living Officer at the University of Bristol Students' Union. We also have Claire Clark, who is a manager at the UE Students' Union Advice Centre. We also have Emma Rossiter, who's from the Student Accommodation team at the University of Bristol, and Matt White, who is the Trading Standards Officer at Bristol City Council. And I'll be handing it over to Claire now.
Thanks for that, Izzy. Bristol is a very desirable UK city to live in with a diverse population. The quality of life is pretty good with lots of things to do and see with lots of green recreational spaces in the city itself. Work opportunities are here for professionals and families, and we have two large universities as well as many colleges in the city, so it has a lively student population too. Competition is very strong in Bristol to rent property, and so landlords have no difficulty finding tenants. But this doesn't mean that you need to rush into making a decision. Depending on your budget and what you're looking for, there are a variety of options available to you. It is important to note that rent in Bristol varies significantly by area, so make sure you do your research. Check that your accommodation search suits your budget and consider how you'll get to campus, as well as other logistics you might need to factor in, such as childcare for your children, schools, or employment for you or your partner. Renting a room in a house means that you'll be sharing the house with other people. You'll have your own bedroom, and usually you share a bathroom, kitchen, and lounge area with your housemates. If you have an ensuite bathroom, then this will cost you extra. These next three slides will give you an overview of the monthly costs in Bristol to rent a property, ranging from a room in a shared house to a four-bed house. Please bear in mind that costs will increase if you are bringing your partner and/or children. These costs are based on properties within a 3-mile radius of Bristol city centre. Properties further out will be slightly cheaper, but not much, and then you will spend more money on travel costs. We strongly recommend that you come to the UK well in advance of your studies starting. So if you can stay with family or friends, that would be great. Or you may need to find temporary accommodation, such as an Airbnb, hostel, or hotel, so that you can get to know the areas of the city and look for suitable accommodation in an area that will match your budget and your needs. You can contact any local letting agency and view properties on their websites. We do not advise you pay any money or sign any contracts before you have actually visited the property. This is the reason we strongly recommend that students that come to Bristol at least 8 weeks before they start their studies. If this is not possible, ask a trusted family or friend living in the UK to help you, as they'll be more familiar with the market. Check out your Students' Union and Bristol City Council websites, and they can help you make sure that the tenancy agreement you're being presented with is legitimate and your rights are being protected. You must disclose all relevant details to letting agencies or landlords when searching for accommodation. For example, you must tell them if children will live in the property, because some properties are not suitable for children, and if a landlord finds out later that you falsified information, the contract can be broken. The location and accommodation you choose really does have an impact on how well you settle into university life and succeed with your studies. Your course timetable is set by the university, and you'll be expected to attend lectures in person, not online. Your timetable cannot be individualised, so it is important to research properly where you want to live. We recommend that you focus your accommodation search to Bristol and its surrounding towns and cities, as lengthy commutes from other parts of the UK, like Birmingham or London, will not be sustainable for very long. Depending on where you come from, you may think rental costs are reasonable or expensive. There are some very important questions to ask yourself when you start looking for accommodation. Think about your budget. This is one of the most important questions to ask yourself. Think about your income and expenditure on a monthly basis, and if the property is too expensive for you, then don't rent it. Check whether bills are included or not and what property is provided, as you may need to budget for extra items. Think about what you're looking for, what it is you want. Do you want a room in a shared house sharing with other students? Do you want to be living on your own in a studio? Are you looking for an entire house because you're bringing your family members to live with you? Is it important to have outside space? Do you want to be on a busy street or a quieter location? Do you want to be near to shops and other local amenities? Think about where you want to live. Is that close to your campus or near to the city centre? Is it important to be on a bus route or near to a good school or your partner's work? Remember, you're required to come onto campus for your lectures, so the closer you are to campus, the better that will be for you. The tenancy agreement or rental contract is a legally binding document, so it is important you read it carefully, and if you have any questions, ask the landlord or agency before you sign it. The tenancy agreement contains important information about the property and what you are responsible for while living there. Once you are happy with the tenancy agreement, then both you and the landlord will sign it. As well as paying the rent, you may be asked to pay a holding deposit, which will reserve the property for you. This should be no more than a week's rent, and once you sign the tenancy, this will be returned to you or put towards your rent. You'll also be asked to pay a tenancy deposit, which is normally a month's rent, and will be returned to you at the end of the tenancy unless the landlord has a reason to make any deductions. You may also be asked to pay a month's rent in advance. Do not pay any money unless you are sure that you want the property, as you may not receive any of this money back if you change your mind. Agencies will normally require a UK-based person who can guarantee your rent if you don't pay. House in Hand UK Guarantor and Your Guarantor are three companies we are aware of, but not all will work for you. And not all letting agencies will accept a third-party guarantor company, so you may have to pay more rent upfront. By law, the letting agent must be a member of a government-backed redress scheme. This is important because it gives you an official route to complain about the agency if you're not happy with them. If the landlord or agent are part of an accreditation scheme, the property and how it is managed will need to meet certain standards. This helps protect your rights and is good for you. And finally, it's perfectly normal for a landlord or agency to ask to see your passport or visa. Landlords in England are required to check their tenant's immigration status before granting a tenancy agreement to make sure that the tenant has a right to rent. I'm now going to pass you over to Emma.
Great, thank you, Claire. I'm Emma and I work in student accommodation at the University of Bristol. And I'm going to talk to you more about where to look for accommodation in Bristol's private sector. So, when looking for accommodation, it's important to think about the location of where you want to live. Most students tend to start searching for accommodation in areas located near to the university. Generally, this would be within walking distance so that you can save time and money on travel. It's also important to consider whether there are other amenities close by, such as shops and local transport links. Accommodation located close to the university tends to be more expensive, so it is worth expanding your search to areas a bit further away if this fits better within your budget. Accommodation rentals can be competitive, so if you are not able to attend house viewings, then we recommend that you ask a friend to view on your behalf or ask if online viewings are available. So most agents will take at least 2 weeks to do paperwork from when you accept an offer. This means that you may need to stay in temporary short term accommodation, and you will need to factor this into your budget and book this in advance. For students who will be moving in with dependents, such as partners or children, then we strongly recommend that you come ahead to look for and secure accommodation before your dependents arrive. It's important to note that staying in temporary short term accommodation can be stressful and expensive. So, a good place to start looking for accommodation is on the Rightmove and Zoopla websites. These are the best property portals to search for properties with registered agents in Bristol. When you go on those websites, you can start your search by entering your university postcode into the search engine, and the postcodes for both the University of Bristol and UE are listed on this screen. Another good place to look for accommodation is the Bristol SU Lettings and Student Pad, and these services are available to all students in Bristol. They offer a full range of private accommodation options for individuals and or groups. They can offer expert advice, and all their landlords sign a code of conduct and commit to providing a fair and professional service to all students. Also in Bristol, there are several large purpose-built properties built or refurbished by private developers specifically for students, and these are located in and around Bristol city centre. Another good place to look for accommodation is on the University of Bristol website, where we have an interactive map where you can explore potential rental areas in Bristol. And the website link is provided on this screen. So now I'm going to hand over to Matt, who will talk more about the legal rights and potential risks you need to be aware of.
Oh, thank you, Emma. That's great. So I'm going to look at the type of agreement. Now, when you enter into a rental agreement, it's as any other contract where they make an offer to you and you accept that offer, and the rent would be the money that would change hands. So, but the difference, I think, with a rental agreement is that the type of rental agreement you have will affect the rights you have. So it's important to make sure you've got the right type of rental agreement. So we would advise checking that it is an assured short-hold tenancy agreement, otherwise known as an AST. If it isn't, the obligations to secure the tenancy deposit in a government-approved scheme don't apply. So that's an important piece of protection that you'd need to make sure you had. It should state whether or not it's an AST on your contract. You can get advice from Bristol City Council Tenancy Relations, the SU Advice Centre or Shelter if you need to. Now, as Claire has pointed out, the holding deposit is an important consideration. So basically the holding deposit is governed by a piece of legislation called the Tenant Fees Act 2019. And how this works is that all fees are banned unless they're listed under Schedule 1 of this Act. And so regarding holding deposits, they're limited to 1 week's rent. The landlord or agent can't charge you more than 1 week's rent as a holding deposit. Now, there's another schedule within that legislation that deals with how your holding deposits should be carried out, how they should be dealt with. So the holding deposit must be paid back to the tenant within 15 days of that tenant entering into an agreement to rent. If the landlord wishes to keep a holding deposit, alleging that a tenant has forfeited this for not going ahead, then they must put this in writing to that tenant. Now, Claire spoke about the security deposit, so I'll go into that in a little bit more detail. This is permitted under the Tenants Fees Act. It's limited to under 5 weeks rent if the annual rent is less than £50,000, and it must be secured in a government approved scheme if it's an assured short-hold tenancy. So that's something that you've got to check for, make sure you've got an AST. Now, the duration of the agreement is something that has to be stated on the tenancy. If it isn't, then that might be cause for concern, because most landlords and agents are geared up for the academic term if they're letting to students and advertising to students. Now, when you come to the end of your tenancy, you can extend it if you'd like to with the agreement of the landlord or agent. They can't charge you fees for doing this, but they can charge you the appropriate amount of rent calculated on a pro rata basis. And at the end of the tenancy, the landlord must return your security deposit. Any alleged damages can be mediated by an approved scheme, so it's very important that you make sure that your security deposit is protected in a government approved scheme. So one thing I've noticed with problems is that problems that have been reported to me as a trading standards officer regarding the private rented sector, where banned fees have been charged. So basically any fee that isn't listed under Schedule 1 of the Tenants Fees Act is banned. They shouldn't charge you these fees. Examples of such fees are cleaning fees, service charges, membership fees, agent administration fees. All of these have been reported to me, and we've taken action against them because they shouldn't be charged to you in the UK where you're a tenant renting here. Also worth mentioning is the unfair contract terms legislation, which comes under the Consumer Rights Act 2015. You can get a model assured short-hold tenancy quite easily by looking on the UK government website, and most landlords will copy this model. You could look at that yourself if you wanted to check. You could and see whether that model agreement differs drastically from the one that's been presented to you. It's always worth asking for your tenancy agreement up front before you part with any money. That most landlords, agents should be happy to let you have a copy of that if you're considering renting through them. That way you can make sure that the terms and conditions are all as they should be and you're not being charged anything you shouldn't be. Now, one thing I've come across that's worth mentioning are tenancy deposit replacement schemes. And these are schemes where letting agents try and replace the securing of a lump sum in a government approved tenancy deposit scheme with monthly payments into an insurance scheme or something that appears to be an insurance scheme. So essentially you pay monthly, you'd be paying monthly instead of paying everything up front. And that's usually the advantage for doing this. But watch out for these because they aren't always what they seem, and agents sometimes are on a commission, so they'll try and sell you these. You don't have to accept them. Basically, they're unregulated and put the tenant at a disadvantage compared to securing a traditional deposit in a government approved scheme. These schemes are legal so long as the tenant is not required to pay a weekly fee. They must be optional and not a condition of taking a tenancy. Now, I've taken action against letting agents that require tenants to take up these schemes, so they can't force you to take up a scheme that replaces your right to secure your deposit in a traditional scheme. I'd recommend going for the traditional scheme every time. So now I'm going to go over what your legal rights are, just a summary so that you can understand where you'd stand when renting in the UK. Now, we talked about the tenancy deposit schemes, which is quite an important thing to consider. And there are 3 schemes. So if they're saying they're going to secure it in any scheme other than these 3, then it's not legitimate. So the 3 schemes are the TDS, Tenancy Deposit Service, My Deposits, or DPS, which is the Deposit Protection Service. And they're all government-backed schemes. So you can be you're safe with your security deposit if they're protected in one of those 3 schemes. And they make sure you'll get your deposit back if you meet the terms of your tenancy agreement, you don't damage the property, and you pay your rent and bills. So providing all of those things are met, you should get the money back at the end. But if there is a dispute, then these schemes will arbitrate that. And your landlord or letting agent must pay your deposit back within 30 days must pay your deposit into the scheme within 30 days of getting it, and then they must return your deposit within 10 days of you both agreeing how much you'll get back at the end if there is any dispute. If you're in dispute with your landlord, then your deposit will be protected in the TDP scheme until the issue is sorted out. So as Claire pointed out, letting agents must belong to a redress scheme. All letting agents have to belong to one of these. Currently in the UK, there are only 2. You've got the Property Ombudsman and you've got the Property Redress Scheme. Agents who fail to belong to a redress scheme can be fined up to £5,000. And it's a good indicator that a Bristol letting agent is legitimate if they belong to a redress scheme. Don't just take their word for it. You can easily check this out yourself by going onto the website of that redress scheme and making sure that they're a member. So just remember that applies to letting agents, not landlords. I think there's plans to make it apply to landlords, but at the moment it doesn't, just letting agents. All letting agents have to belong to a redress scheme. So also, if letting agent is handling money handling your money as a client, then they must belong to a client money protection scheme. There are 5 of these in the UK. So just to go through them, you've got Client Money Protect, Money Shield, Property Mark, RICS, Safe Agent. You've also got your Carla as well, but they're tied in with another scheme. They must hold their clients' money in an account with a bank or building society authorised by the Financial Conduct Authority. And you must get a certificate confirming membership of the scheme they join. So they have to have a certificate to prove it. And they need to display that certificate in their offices. But more importantly, for you looking as an international student, they have to display that on their website as well. And again, they can be fined up to £5,000 if they handle client money and they're not a member. So just to go over permitted and banned fees again. So as previously stated, there's a list under Schedule 1 of the Tenants Fees Act, and if a fee is not contained in that list, then it's a banned fee. So those fees are the rent, refundable tenancy deposit capped at 5 weeks rent, refundable holding deposit capped at 1 week's rent, payments to change the tenancy when requested by the tenant, that's capped at £50 or a reasonable cost. So they can't charge you too much if you need to change your tenancy. Say you need to get an extra, you need to swap a tenant partway through. Payments associated with the early termination of the tenancy when requested by the tenant. So if you decide to finish it early, they could charge you some money again, but that has to be a reasonable fee. And payments in respect of utilities, communication services, TV licence and council tax. So you've got a requirement to pay your bills. They can ask you to do that. That's not a banned fee. And they can charge you a default fee if you make a late payment. And they can also charge you if you lose your key. But again, these are restricted to a reasonable amount. And if you feel you're being charged too much for anything they say you've done wrong, please contact Bristol City Council Private Housing and we'll have a look at it for you. So also you've got protection against being misled. So as a trading standards officer, I was taking quite a few cases under the Consumer Protection for Unfair Trading Regulations. And these concern what are known as misleading actions, where they say something that's either misled you or isn't true and has caused you to enter into your agreement. So they might lie about the location, or they might lie about something else, the size of the property or anything like that. If you get into your accommodation, you find they've misled you, please get in touch and we'll have a look at it. More importantly, even if they don't say anything and they should have done, this could be what's known as a misleading omission. So they've got a duty to let you know important information. For instance, if you paid a deposit and they haven't told you whether or not it's secured in a government approved scheme, then that's something you should know. So they could be in trouble for doing that. They've got an obligation to tell you things that are important to you, that would affect your decision when entering into the agreement. And if they don't tell you those things and it causes you any financial loss, then that's something we could have a look at. In addition to that, under that legislation, the Consumer Protection from Trading Regulations, there's also protection against unfair commercial practices. So there's a general standard of professional diligence that must be met by all businesses. And this standard can include letting agents who discriminate against a protected characteristic under the Equalities Act. So if you feel they're discriminating against you, that's something we could look at. And also a list of practices that are always considered to be unfair, such as claiming they belong to an organisation they don't belong to. So worth getting in touch if you feel that they've ripped you off for any money or they've induced you into your rental agreement through any sort of foul means. Also, briefly, just worth mentioning, we also deal with protection from harassment. So if you feel that your landlord is harassing you at all throughout the course of your tenancy, please get in touch. And by harassment, we mean behaviour that's likely to cause you to leave your home or to stop you from entering it or to stop you from using any part of your home, which might cause you to leave. So that could be harassment. Also, we've got environmental health officers at Bristol City Council who you can report problems with living conditions to. So if they ignore you when you report a problem, a repair problem, or they don't fix that within a reasonable time, then our environmental health officers can tell your landlord to do the repairs or give your landlord a legal notice to make them fix things. Of course, the problems would have to make the property fall below a recognised standard. So if it's uninhabitable or it's of harm to health, then that's something we could look at. And finally, from me, just a few risks that you have to be wary of when looking to rent in the UK. And this doesn't just apply to Bristol, it applies to every big city in the UK with universities. We do see quite a lot of scams that aren't even based in the UK. Basically, they're advertisements on social media that try and induce international students into paying money directly to them for property that doesn't exist at all. So you can pay this money, turn up, and there'll be no property at all. It's very frustrating because it's not, as most of these scams don't come from the UK, there's not a lot we can do about it other than warn you. So there are indicators to look out for. As I said before, look at the rental agreement, ask for a copy of that. Be wary of how you're asked to pay, and consider, where did you see the advert? If you saw it on social media, take extra precautions, because that's where most of the problems come from. I'm not saying that all scams come from social media or that you don't get legitimate adverts there, but always take extra care if you're responding to an advert placed on social media for accommodation. And finally, if you really want to make sure that the property is legitimate, you can go to the land registry, and for a small fee, you can check that the who owns that property. And if that doesn't match with the landlord name, then obviously that's something to bear in mind. So thank you for that. I shall now pass you back.
Yeah, so here's some links and email addresses for further advice if you need it. Bristol City Council, you can email them, their private housing department. Shelter, they have a Bristol branch who can give you advice. They also have a hotline in emergencies. And if you're at UWE, you can contact the advice centre at the Students' Union, and you can use StudentPad. If you're at the University of Bristol, you can contact the accommodation team for advice, and also the SU lettings team. Yeah, thank you for watching. Good luck in the housing hunt, and we look forward to seeing you in Bristol.